What we wanted to do today is run you through some of the things that we've been trying to add into the system to look towards a full service solution for rental management and also for sales for that matter, but we're going to concentrate on rental today. What we've been trying to resolve is the fact that for many people rental is no longer just about the piece of equipment, it's also about all of the labour elements that go with that piece of equipment. And whether that means machine operators in the true sense of operated equipment. So from our perspective, that originally began in the system as things like crane operators for operated equipment itself, but also big installation and takedown services. So if you are installing a full line of pumps, for example, or you're installing cabins, those kind of processes tend to involve quite a lot of labour, both at the beginning and the end of the rental. And then into some of the other services that some of you do offer, so things like training, where you actually want to consider the elements of training your customers or training their end users in some cases, providing specialist certified inspectors. So if you're doing something like hoists, you may actually be providing additional services beyond the straightforward rental side of things. And then all the other things that come behind that. So actually managing the labour around your own internal processes, whether that is service technicians or project managers, or just bringing in specialists for particular pieces of a customer's requirements. And as far as the system is concerned, we've always had this element of machine operation. So our crane companies, both here in the UK and those people who use operated equipment elsewhere in the world, have used what we refer to as operated equipment or operated plant in the UK market. That's something that we've kept, but what we've done is changed how it works so that it becomes part of the overall rental process where and when you want to use it. And as part of all of this, we're looking basically at trying to address three components of a specific problem. So the first part of that is actually tracking your labour and understanding where it's going, who needs it, managing the demand side of things, I guess. And then the allocation piece, so actually knowing who you've got available, what they're actually qualified to do, and being able to associate those to your demand. And then the final piece of that, obviously, is the costing side of things. So 5 basic questions: who's available, what qualifications have they got, when are they actually available, where are they needed, and then the final piece of that, obviously, is how can you then cost that accurately. So that's what we're going to try and cover over today at a relatively high level, and I know that because this is something that a lot of people use in very different ways or would like to potentially use in very different ways, the chances are we'll probably want to do individual conversations with people after this session if you're interested and actually look at the specifics of your business. So we're going to keep this relatively high level and hopefully generate some interest from your perspective. So having said that, I'm going to hand over to Dave, who's going to actually drive the demo side of this.
Great, thank you very much, Helen. So let me quickly open up our system. So as Helen mentioned, so we're now not looking at, as assets on their own. We're now also looking at operators, people. And one of the first major changes that we've made, we've actually now taken the concept of an operator, so not just the person who uses the system, but also the person who's handling the equipment, whether that's a rental item or whether that's an engineer. We've actually brought them all together in one place. So we're now actually going to manage all that information in one simple application, the operator application. So again, we've added more information to this. So we still have our roles, we still have our accounts and companies that we can link to, but now we also have made the roles a bit more intuitive. So instead of just saying, okay, this person can access this application, we now also have a concept of user role types. So this really takes the simple concept of the 5 standard roles that we have in our system: an operator, so this is a person that actually handles the equipment, to mechanics, pickers, or drivers. On top of that, we also then have the logic to create unique role types, specific for each business. So in if you're dealing with a crane operated business, you could have a crane driver, an oiler, a rigger. If you're dealing with a pump business, that could be a complete different role type. And again, all these can then be linked to other parts of our system, whether that's specific costing or specific reporting requirements.
So can I attach that into my competencies as well? So those role types, obviously there are different types of people doing different things on the business.
Correct.
So how can I manage that from a competency point of view as well?
So if we're looking at operators here that we have here, so we've got Thomas here available to us. One of the things here, so we first of all got is HR information available to us, also what branch he works into. And on top of that, we've actually built in an actual competency level for on a quite detailed basis. So we can now add against this specific person, whether it's against the category, we can say, okay, these are the specific items or competency he requires to do certain things with all the relevant information and against the relevant roles, as well as against certain item codes that we have or group codes, or even if it's against a specific site or a project. So all that information can now be made quite specific for that person when he requires it.
So if I was looking at some kind of government project, for example, where there was a site qualification needed before I was allowed to go through the gates, that's where I put that in.
Exactly right. So we have our site address here where we can actually set a specific competency for that specific project, specific address. And when we do the contract later on, once you select that site or select a certain item code, the system will check whether this specific person has that competency required.
Okay. And from a business point of view, if I was holding that kind of data in another system, so let's say I had Oracle managing my qualifications for my people in an Oracle HR system, presumably we could just import that information as well?
Exactly. You can interface that from any system, any HR system back into our system.
Okay. So obviously the whole point of this, once we've got our people and our competencies, is really to look at how that then works within the rental process. So can you maybe take us through a rental contract and show us one of those?
For sure. So I've got in my control center a couple of contracts already created. So first of all, I'm going to just edit my simple contract I have here. I've got one excavated and a setup charge. I'm going to right click and open my contract. There we go. There we go. So,
sorry, that's mine.
Is that yours? Okay.
Sorry, that's my fault. I was messing with the demo earlier and I set up an extra contract to confuse Dave.
There we go.
Top one.
Yeah, that's right. That was right. There we go. So, again, we have, for people that are currently using the Emerald system, the functionality doesn't really change if you are not currently using the labeled functionality. So everything that we have available will still be available in the standard Emerald system. Now what we have enhanced really against a line or against an activity is added additional information. So first of all, this screen here hasn't really changed, as you can see. One of the important things that we do have in this screen now is whether we're actually going to charge for this specific item or not, or are we just going to record the fact that this is a cost.
So when you say we're not going to charge or not, you don't mean we're not going to charge for the rental. You mean are we going to charge it through a timesheet or are we going to charge it just as a normal standard rental charge like any other normal daily, weekly, monthly type charge?
There is that, but also the actual recording of the cost of that. So I could actually put an item in here, but I just want to record the fact that we're using that internally for ourselves. So instead of having just an item where I'm hiding it out, I might want to send an engineer out at our own cost, so we can still record that value, because we actually have behind the scenes the labor element, the labor cost in here as well, which I can briefly show you as well. So one of the new tabs we have here is our People and Additions tab. Now, first of all, one of the things that we have available here is we can actually preset certain activities, certain labor requirements against an item code. So if you know that a certain rental equipment, rental crane requires 2 operators, a crane driver and a banksman, for example, or a rigger, we can actually predefine these. Or we can actually say, no, I want to create an ad hoc labor requirement. Now that could be split between an operator or a mechanic or an engineer. We then also have the role types that we can select. So again, this is what we previously talked about. We can actually set unique, specific roles linked to this type of operator. So in this case, I might need a crane operator or a foreman or an installer. We then also have the ability to have multiple people. So if I know I need 4 of these, then I can actually default these in here as well. And of course, when is the labor requirement actually needed for? So our rental might be for 4 months, but we can actually only need the labor requirement element for the first 2 weeks, or maybe just even the first day. And the little tick boxes we have here actually help you with that. So we actually default certain dates setup, takedown, logically linked throughout this application here. The same goes for working days. So if you want a full rental covered from every single day of the week, we could just tick the rental box here. If you're saying, no, actually, in the UK, for example, we're only going to work Monday to Friday, we can say, right, we're not working on Sunday. And again, it's quite intuitive in that way. On top of that, we also have something that we call the shift start times and end times, which basically pull through from the on-rent date, on-rent time and the off-rent time. So again, the system assumes here that the shifts will start at the same time, the on-hire will start. Again, that can be flexible, that can be changed.
So basically, I can have any combination of labour demand being set at the rental contract level.
Exactly.
And I can keep on coming back in and adding more during the course of the rental if I wanted to?
Yep. So if there's changes that are going to be made, for example, the contract changes, the dates on the contracts change, the system will actually make you aware that change will need to be made, and you can go back into your hire order up until the point at when you return the contract. Now, if we're talking about items that are not rentable as such, service type items, you can also have, in this case, a setup charge. So we're using an operator charge count in this example, but instead of having an operator pulling through, I have an engineer defaulting through. And again, the engineer could be just for setup. So in this case, I need you for 2 minutes just to tick a box somewhere on site, and again, we can default that information through. But again, I can edit it at any time.
Okay. So the same principle exists on a sales order as well. So if I was selling somebody a brand new, I don't know, access platform, and I wanted to give them an hour of training as part of the sales handover, I could use exactly the same mechanism to track that sale training labour.
Correct, in exactly the same way.
Okay. So if my demand is being set in my contract, how do I then actually get the people allocated onto the contract itself?
Yep. We've made a few different changes here as well. So first of all, the first change we made is into our standard control center. So let me just finish that. So we're actually included a new color coordination in the system here. So we've used the description table to actually say if it's green, then the labor requirement has been met, and if it's yellow, then it still needs to be fulfilled. On top of that, we have some intuitive buttons available to us as well. So if you right-click on this little icon here, that will actually open up the labor allocation application, which is a brand new application that's actually linked to this specific functionality. So in this case, if I just show you everything, I can actually look at every single bit of labor requirements that's available to me. So if I just clear some data here. So in here we have on one side, we have a breakdown of all our contracts in the various different statuses. So the colors that we use here are the same colors used in our standard control center. So whether that's in order status, dispatch, or whichever status that might be. We also have a breakdown of the roles that we require. And again, this is where the competencies also come in. So first of all, I've got some logic that tells me, okay, I've got 210 excavator and I need a crane. Who can drive these? So if I flick through these, as you can see here, I need a crane operator. But if I click on my mechanic, you'll see the system will actually remove certain people and show me other ones. The same goes for if I show all my items, all my operators. So again, I can override that if I wish to do so. We also use color coordination on the right-hand side of the screen. So this screen shows me a weekly view. So from the 10th of November all the way through to the end of this week in AM and PM view. Now if I want to be a bit more granular and say, right, show me actually what's happening today, then I can see in a 24-hour view in half-hour intervals, we can actually see what labor requirement is required. And the same goes for the monthly view there as well. So if I look at one of the contracts I've created before, so I've got my excavator and my crane operator, just a case of selecting my line and tells me who's available. So first of all, I can add my friend Thomas here, and just a case of dragging it across. So I will have a few questions to answer. Do you want to allocate the whole contract? In this case, I'm going to say yes. And as you can see, we've now actually turned the requirement green as well. Now, if for whatever reason this person was unavailable, then I've actually got the option to right-click on his detail here, and I can deallocate this operator for a certain period of time. So if I got, let's say, someone has rang me up and he says, look, today I cannot work tomorrow because I've got a family emergency, probably won the lottery and has gone to Hawaii, I can say, okay, Saturday till, let's say, Sunday, he's now no longer available. And what will happen then? My labour allocation will change, and it still wants me then to add a new labour requirement for that specific day. So in this case, I can take Victorio here and add him to that specific requirement. There we go. So that's now a split requirement. Now if I go a bit further down, I still have a mechanic to assign, and there we go, I can add Kevin as a mechanic to my order.
So does this work purely within a branch location, or can I assign things on behalf of other locations as well?
It works completely with transferring lines, transferring orders, and also you can work with people from other branches. So if you haven't got the operators available within your region or within your branch, you can actually move across and look at every single person that we have available.
So I could allocate somebody from another branch location onto my job or my equipment?
Exactly. And if he's not available, you will actually get a warning. So if there's an overlap within the allocation, you'll also get a warning message. The same, if I shall look at a person, I've got a right-click option available here. I can preset the days he works and also preset his unavailable time. So again, I will get a warning message to say, right, this guy's on holiday, on vacation, for example.
Okay.
So the other things that we have available, we've got a bit of free text here. So again, that could be anything relevant to your specific business. For example, for a crane operator, it might be that this guy is linked to a specific asset within your business, a specific crane, and you can put that information in here. So it could be a registration number or a serial number that you might want to enter in here, or it could be anything, any free text that you might have on there.
Okay, so we're obviously looking at this from a rental point of view at the moment, but if we wanted to, can I look at it from the same perspective on something like a work order?
Yeah, so as you can see here, we've got multiple other types available to us, whether it's a worksheet, a sales order, a sales contract, service lines. I've also got information available here for all my services that require a person.
Okay.
So in a similar way, similar kind of competency level, we can actually just drag people across on any of these requirements. So in this case, it uses the same logic as red, so it's actually overdue, but it breaks it down by definition and also by the service that you actually require. So it breaks it down a nice little detail there as well. And again, you can then see what's required for the specific order, or workshop order in this case.
So Rihanna is actually from King Lifting, and they've been working with us very hard on getting this working from their perspective. So King Lifting are a crane company based in the UK. They have a lot of branch locations, and they're looking for efficiency within their process. So this screen here, which is the operator allocation screen, is just a slightly different view of that document screen in the background. And from a system point of view, that is basically giving just a different view of the data. And maybe Dave, you could talk a little bit about why that's been so important in you helping Rihanna deliver a better, more efficient process to her business.
One of the main importances for King Lifting, for example, was that their assets their cranes are really important to them, but they also need a good view of what their people are actually doing. So currently their spreadsheets and everything else. Now with this screen, for example, whether it's a monthly view, a weekly view, or a daily view, I can actually see what the people are doing, because people might work on multiple contracts in a day. So on the right hand side here, I can actually see what my requirements are. So in this case, we need some certain requirements, and again, it uses competencies in a similar way. So it tells me which people are actually available for the job. So at the end of each day, when I plan for the next day, for example, I can actually quite clearly see which people are not doing anything for tomorrow. And again, that saves a lot of spreadsheets having to go backwards and forwards between the different branches as well, because this becomes really important when you have multiple branches working together, trying to assign all the relevant people. So one of the things, yeah, right. Now, I just got another note that, Rihanna, that you're actually online.
Hello?
Oh, there we are.
Hi, Rihanna.
Hello? Oh, hello. I was talking on the phone, but I don't think they can hear me.
Oh.
Don't worry, we can hear you now. What I was going to say was,
Okay, brilliant.
give us a quick idea of how this has gone down with your branch teams, because obviously you've been training them as part of your process ready for your go live. And it's a very different process to what you've done before. So I'd just like to have a little bit of a feedback in terms of how end users have really thought about it, or what they thought about it.
Yeah, so I'm on my 4th group. I've done them today. So nearly all of our hire desks have now seen the labour scheduling specifically. I think that is one of the biggest changes in Emerald, especially for us and our business. And we've all had really positive feedback from everybody. I think it looks a lot more modern to begin with. The colour coding is amazing, to be able to see what you've got available, to be able to see what's been allocated, to be able to flick so easily between my people. We love the drop and drag. I think it's a really quick, easy way to allocate men. We're a very high-paced business, so we have lots of changes through the day. So to be able to drop people, allocate them, to be able to deallocate them in one click has really worked well for us. All my users are really excited about using it, and we go live in a couple of weeks now, is it, Tony? 3 weeks? So yeah, I really like the colour in my staff when I'm training people. As you can see on the contract section from the screen you're looking at the moment, to be able to see what's in dispatch and what's still in order status is really great. And also to be able to make people unavailable, that normally highlights as red. Again, it's a very visual screen, and it works well for our business.
Cool. And from your perspective, I know currently you've been doing a lot of things on spreadsheets and on whiteboards, and obviously doing things in a system does require a different sort of mentality in terms of people actually have to put an effort to make things happen in the system. Do you think that's actually going to generate some real cost savings for you going forward?
Yes, definitely. In the document allocation, well, one of that is obviously being able to specify which driver or person is allocated to which asset. That's a great way of us manage our men. A lot of the time the men go out with a specific asset, so the fact that I can link those together means I can get rid of some of the spreadsheet and this screen to actually manage our men. We can make them unavailable when they're unavailable. Again, a great tool for management. So yeah, moving forward, we're going to get rid of the spreadsheets and we are simply going to use the labour allocation module to manage our men. It's a big change for everybody in the offices. Some of them are a bit dubious, but I really think it'll work, and we're going to go full steam ahead and use it to its full potential.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, Rihanna. It's always good to have a bit of feedback from somebody who's actually seeing it from the end user perspective.
Yeah, no, I think it will work really well, and we've had positive feedback from all the users, so I feel really good about it.
Cool, excellent. Right, so let's move on a little bit further then. So we've got our demand managed, we've allocated our people to this. So once those things have actually been dispatched and they're out on rent, how do I get my time back into the system? Because that's obviously the third part of this, getting the time and the actual cost back into the system.
So there's various ways of doing that in our system. Now it's fairly flexible. So people that are currently using our operate equipment logic will still be able to create their individual timesheets for their operators. Or we have the ability to actually create a payroll timesheet, which allows the user to create a timesheet for multiple activities. So not just for one contract, it could be multiple contracts, it could also be multiple types of contracts. So if I take my user here, so I've got TC, oops, if I can't type it in right, TC, there we go, and I've got my date, the 11th, 10th today, my branch, so another existing, that's fine. So in this case, this is my my payroll timesheet. So as I mentioned, multiple types, multiple activities. So instead of just having to do individual timesheets, I can actually say, okay, pick a contract. In this case, a hireable contract. I can enter the number in here. Now, I would have been so much more efficient if I written it down. Of course, we can copy and paste in here, so actually, there we go. So I take that one, copy cell and go in there. I can type in my number in there and enter the relevant details. Oh yes, I didn't dispatch it. No, I forgot to dispatch it, Helen. It's a little, so from the perspective of actually entering the information, it's very simple. So again, we have the ability to add multiple labels and also add multiple rates, 7 start and finish dates on there as well. There we go, that's a good example. So again, we put our start, finish times in there. Now what this will also do, as soon as I save this payroll timesheet, if I'm actually dealing with an operating equipment time type contract, it will actually still create in the background the operated timesheet, just as it would do in the standalone. Now if I was dealing with a workshop or an engineer type timesheet, it will actually create a labour line on that specific workshop order. So it saves a lot of time and you don't have to go back into the workshop order to enter that specific line onto that workshop contract.
So if I start using labour allocation in here, the current process where somebody would go in and put a labour line on a work order just disappears. That's not necessary at all. Okay, cool.
Yes. And then we have the various labels available to it as we have with our normal operating plan timesheet.
Okay,
as well.
So those labels are coming off the charge calculation, aren't they? So if my charging calculation was an hourly based charging calculation and I had standard time, overtime rate 1, overtime rate 2, that's what I'd see in that drop down list.
Exactly. That's right. So and again, and then once you save your payroll timesheet, you would actually you can either run through an approval process if you wish to do so, or you can just invoice in the normal way as well.
Okay, and as far as that timesheet is concerned, I can have my time against the branch, I can just have non-working time effectively, or time that isn't specific to something, exactly. But I can also put my time against a project, can't I? Correct. So for anybody who's looking at this from a construction perspective, you can look at your rental contract from a project perspective, but you could just have time against the project without being specific to contract if you wanted to.
Exactly, so if you're dealing with a project manager who has to put time against a specific project, you can put all the information in here as well. Or if you just want to record the fact that somebody has been cleaning the yard but not actually linked to a contract, we can do that all in here as well. And that comes back to the labour and the cost element as well. Okay.
So why don't we just open, so we've got our time in. Do you want to swap over to Chrome and quickly put some reports as well? Yep. So obviously from a reporting perspective, everything that you're doing throughout that process can be reported on as everything else. But I know for some of you, the standard costing concept is becoming more and more relevant in terms of how you look at things like labour, because obviously there's a major cost implication from anything that you do from a labour perspective. So we just put this one together just as an example. So I'm looking here at just the payroll timesheet. So I'm looking at all the timesheets that have been posted. And I've decided just to concentrate purely on the non-charged stuff. So all the charges that haven't gone out to the customer, but I'm bearing internally. So I'm looking at the total number of hours that I've actually posted on my timesheets, how much that's cost me, and this figure here is coming from a standard cost figure being held against the type of labour and the person. So the type of the person doing that type of job effectively can have a slightly different standard cost than somebody else. So you might have a charge for an apprentice crane operator and a different charge for a senior qualified crane operator. So you might have different rules in the background. Those standard costs are then just being used to multiply out the number of hours worked for each line of those timesheets so that I can get some kind of a breakdown. So you can see on here there's a breakdown by project. So I can see that this particular project's had 240 hours of work done on it, and I can just drill into that and look at it. I've also got a breakout by the type of labour. So in this case, because it's all my non-chargeable pieces, I've got branch time, I've got my work order time, I've got my non-working time, so all the time people just signed off and said they were either sick or on vacation. And I've also got a little time where I've actually been working on an asset, but it didn't relate back to a particular work order. So that's another option that you've got to play with in that equipment timesheet. And then I've got my cost of my labour split out by branch. So I'm just giving you some different ways of looking at labour. And each of these elements down here, again, I can drill into so I can see maybe a slightly different way. In this case, I've got junior qualification for my labour. So that sort of concept of the labour type and the standard costing element is where you start to really drive your standard or your average costs. And those standard figures can be held at the type of labour level, at the type of person level. And obviously, if you're getting your real costs in your payroll system, then we can look at interfaces to bring that information back into the system. So as long as your payroll system can have something that says this type of person is this amount of money, and we can have some way of prorating that back into our system from a timesheet cost point of view, then we can actually match the two things up and give you an actual as well. But that was basically just to give you an idea that the process doesn't just have to be about the operational process. It could also have a bearing on your financial process as well, in terms of your cost allocation side of things. Okay, so I think that's everything we wanted to try and cover from a sort of demonstration point of view. I'm going to open it up to questions and let Jill lead that side of things.
Okay, everyone is unmuted, so if there's any questions, please feel free to jump right in. Helen, is there anything that you can think of off the top of your head that's something that somebody would ask, having seen this?
Well, there was a couple of questions that a few people have asked me recently, so I thought I might just bring those up as a starting point. So the first one is, obviously, time is something that people do in the field as well as actually in a yard. So we are thinking about what might come around from a mobile application to enter time. And if any of you are particularly interested in that, or potentially are using existing mobile time entry systems of some description, I know Craig is very, very keen to hear from anybody who might want to think about how that might work going forward.
One thing I am interested in is, you mentioned that this is available in the Emerald version. Is it going to be in any previous versions, or are we only going to see this in Emerald and above?
As far as the piece of labour allocation is concerned, that really is something that's only in the Emerald release. However, if you're interested in just looking at the standard costing side of that, you can do that already in Standard 10. You need to think a little bit about it, but in terms of configuration, you can still look at your labour cost references. And you can look at the standard cost field on the item code as ways of actually bringing some standard cost information in. And then every time you put a labour line on a work order, for example, or you can put a zero rated line if you wanted to on a rental contract, and then use that as a mechanism just for creating the number of hours so that you could generate some standard costing reporting. So you can still achieve something. It won't be quite as the full frontal version we've just gone through here, but it is trying to bring the same kind of data into play.
Anybody else? Any questions? All the lines are open, and as well as if you think of a question after this webinar, please feel free to email marketing@winsystems.com, helen.sowerby@winsystems.com, or daveverhan@winsystems.com. But in the meantime, we still have all the lines open for any questions.
Hi, Helen.
Hello.
So a question I've got would be, could you use this to help with the installation of an asset you would then hire? So an example of that might be, we might install a fire alarm system. So we would use our engineers to visit the site, install the system. At that point it goes on hire. We would charge their labour. It might be, it requires maintenance, and they might need to go back and repair, which we wouldn't charge. So does the system allow you to choose whether you wish to charge the labour on or not?
Absolutely. So you can have a mixture of those two. So I'm guessing your fire alarm system doesn't really exist as an asset on the system. It's more of a concept that you're installing.
Yes, they are physical assets within our system. So they're E-coded and bulk assets.
Okay, so you'd rent the unit out then, so that will be your starting point of your rental contract. You'd have at least 2 labour lines on it, one for the installation labour, and that would be something you're just charging at the beginning effectively. And then you'd have a second line, which wouldn't necessarily be something you charge the customer, which would be your maintenance, and that would be a monthly maintenance. And if you remember when Dave was going through and looking at how you can actually create those labour requirements, you can go into there and say specifically, I only want this to be for a couple of days or for 1 day a week or something like that. So you can be very specific on that labour requirement. So if it was that you need them to visit once every 6 months, you could put in 2 individual events for 6 months' time and then 12 months' time after that. Okay, so you've got a lot of flexibility there if you wanted to follow that kind of process. And from your the other thing that would do is also your cabins. So if you were looking at those cabin repairs we were talking about when I was down on site, you could use the same mechanism for really understanding how much the installation of some of your fancy equipment costs you when you're actually putting things into the cabins.
Yes, I mean, I wondered, like, say, if we are preparing a modular cabin unit to go to one of our new sites, obviously we have a lot of labour up front, and at the moment that isn't managed within the system at all, so it'll be a series of paperwork and spreadsheets, no doubt. I wonder whether this could provide an opportunity to capture that labour, even though the item is not on hire yet. It's still perhaps in order status.
Absolutely. So that one, probably the easiest way of doing that is through a work order against the asset. So you'd raise the work order against the cabin, and then all of your labour will just go through timesheet to that work order rather than to the rental contract.
I see, yeah. And then when it comes to the installation of the cabin, which we would charge on, then you would use this particular module to do that?
Yes, so you'd have your installation labour through the rental contract, but your configuration labour through the work order.
Okay, yeah, that's very helpful, thank you.
Cool. Any other questions from anybody? Hopefully then you've all had enough from the demonstration side of things. If anybody has got specific things that you'd like to go through individually, either with myself or Dave, please just drop us a mail after this, and we were very happy to set up a separate conversation with you. I know this is a little bit more difficult because there are a lot of different ways that you could use this, so it's not quite as straightforward as just having a sort of one-shot fits everything a process.
Okay, Helen, I think we're going to go ahead and wrap this one up. I want to thank everybody for taking the time to join our webinar. I hope you've learned something from here, and again, feel free to email any three of us if you have any questions post-webinar. Helen, Dave, is there anything you'd like to add?
I don't think so right now.
No, thank you very much.
Well,
Thank you very much for everybody's time.
And bye-bye.